Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast. Today we are talking about Frank Stone. Yes, it's been a few months since we've spoke about it, but we're going to revisit the ending. Was it satisfying enough? We've seen some comments where people weren't too happy. So mate, I'm going to throw it straight over to you. Was the ending of Frank Stone satisfying to you?
Say it was for me. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was quite satisfied with my ending. I killed a lot of characters, but I got Linda at the campfire, so I had like a solo Linda ending, and I was pretty happy with that. I get the sentiment, a lot of people are unhappy because it's all dark endings, right? Apart from one alternate ending you might get if you basically keep Chris in the modern timeline, and then, you reject the pendant, and then you walk back through that portal at that certain moment, then you could potentially get we have a chance to break the cycle. What if kind of ending, which is maybe the best one. I didn't get that. I murdered Chris. I accidentally got the necklace. I was very close from getting that ending. But I had the solo Linda thing, but I don't know. Maybe it's the former DBD fan in me, but I get the impression that behavior in supermassive games had a clear idea in their mind that this whole thing was supposed to be a Dead by Daylight origin story where the whole game is designed for these people to go through this torment to end up at the campfire, to kind of like set up a Dead by Daylight like survivor basically. When you look at Dead by Daylight, you could complete these challenges before, and it had all these lore building for all the survivors, and a lot of them go through stuff like that. So yeah, like, I was a big fan of it. Maybe it's non-DBD fans, maybe it's certain people who aren't necessarily a fan of dark endings. I personally am. Yeah, I get the school of thought that maybe it shouldn't all be dark endings. Maybe there should be like an easier chance to achieve a happy ending, because maybe you play the game perfectly or very well, but you still get a dark ending at the game. Maybe you feel robbed from that. So I do honestly get that argument, lad. But I think, I don't know why, maybe it's the dark Britishness in me, mate, and maybe it's the DBD thing, as I mentioned, but I weirdly like the idea that, to quote Benny from Fallout New Vegas, the game was rigged from the start.
I mean, speaking for me, even as like a non-DBD fan, I actually grew in appreciation of the ending once I knew what the DBD elements of it were. Because I mean, I'm not against it. I mean, you can't expect a Disney sort of ending every time, can you? Everyone escapes and everything's all right. It's not like that the characters died. If you get the ending where they all end up at the campfire, sure, we know that they're going to be in a loop and whatnot. But physically, in our game, they did not die. But yeah, I think it was great. I think that actually, once I learned that the campfire served as like the lobby for DBD, and it was sort of setting up as like a prequel to what DBD was going to be, and the introduction of Frank Stone, I actually quite liked it. And that's speaking obviously as a non-DBD fan. I think the ending for me is perhaps more layered in the choices, where I was dissatisfied, but we'll come to that in another video. So yeah, no problems on my end.
Yeah, and I also think, mate, that like in the horror genre, especially in movies in general, there is this almost tradition that happens quite a bit, where maybe the final girl or like the final person survives at the very end of the first game, and they're actually just a proper like victim, and they might die at the start of the second movie. I can think of a few movies where that happens. Particularly one in my mind right now is Hostel. Where like the main character, the first one, dies straight at the second. So I do think it is a bit of a horror tradition where your final girl actually is almost like doomed. Like being a horror character, almost like, yeah, you could survive, but you're either going to live and grow up with a bunch of trauma and scars, or you're going to be fodder to the next movie. So I almost think that, if you're playing a horror game, you can almost expect that, your players are more doomed than they are going to walk out with sunshine and rainbows, to be honest. So yeah, like I get the school of thought why certain people might be aggrieved by the ending, but yeah, from my perspective, I really like what they did. I feel like, again, I have to mention, they had this I feel like they wanted to create a DBD origin story through this game, casting a Frank Stone. and I feel like the whole game was geared that way, and I feel like they almost couldn't steer away from that objective too much. So yeah, I was all for it personally.
Knocking the like the campfire bit to one side, and I'm taking a slight liberty here because I'm almost referring to the final chapter as to, you know, the very ending. As a spectacle, really like the ending of the casting of Frank Stone, with him coming out through the screen, that music. I mean, I can't even sort of describe it. It's almost got like a Hans Zimmer sort of quality to it. You know, the reveal of, like, you know, the stomach opening, and, you know, the faces in his skin, and, you know, the sense that there's going to be a chase scene. I thought it was, you know, and you know, even the chase scene itself, you know, you can have beheadings in there. I mean, there was certainly people that saw my playthrough would know there was lots of deaths in my one as well, so it really was a massacre. But I would rather have that than, say, what the Quarry did. We do, you know, dogging on the Quarry again. By you're just shooting the main villain in the back, and then hurrah, everything's saved, everyone's back to normal, and, you know, end credits. So, you know, I suppose it's what people like at the end of the day. I'm open to a dark ending, even if it's not perfect, you know, for everyone to live and whatnot. But you get a bit of a spectacle as well.
Yeah, like, here's a little question for you just to end the video, mate. If you played Frank Stone and all your choices were golden, you got all the characters to the end, you know, like, you won all your fight scenes, but all of your characters at the campfire, would you say you'd be annoyed that you did all that hard work to keep these characters that you love, that you got invested in really far at the end of the game, but they were doomed, despite the fact that you played well and you feel like you haven't been rewarded for it?
Yeah, it's a good question, because obviously I didn't get anyone to the campfire. So, to be honest, I don't think I would have minded it still. Because the fact for me of, like, keeping them all alive, I would still count it as keeping them all alive. Because we know that outside the events of the game, they're going to be stuck in a loop and whatnot. In the events of the game, I got them from point A to point B, I got them to the end, and that wouldn't faze me at all. So I feel like my opinion would be the same, to be honest. Okay, guys, so yeah, that was our little discussion on the ending of Frank Stone. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Be keen on reading and replying to them. And do keep an eye out for Frank Stone videos, because we are going to churn a few more out yet. So we will see you in the next one.
Take care, guys.